and welcome from Alba Publishing to the launch of Sean O'Connor's fine new book, Fragmentation. And Amanda Bell has very kindly agreed to do the honours. Amanda, her first book, Undercurrents, was published by Alba Publishing in 2016, and she's gone on to publish several more books, one more with Alba. Amanda, go for it.
Thank you. Wonderful to see so many people whose names are familiar from reading their work. So it's an honor and a pleasure to have been asked to launch Fragmentation for Sean. Sean has become a great friend since we met at the launch of his first book, Let Silence Speak, in 2016. That was back in the carefree days of in-person launches. His reputation had preceded him, so even before I met Sean, I was aware of the depth of his commitment to the haibun, to Japanese form poetry, and his commitment has had a strong influence on my own work since that time. And we collaborate very closely as writers, and in so doing, I've learned a number of important things. First of all, apart from being a very talented and hardworking writer, Sean has had an extraordinarily varied life experience, and this is all starting to come out in his work, which is very exciting to see. Secondly, he's extremely generous with his knowledge and his expertise, both as an editor and a peer reviewer. And he picks up on things with great acuity and subtlety and is able to bring out the best in his fellow writers. And thirdly, he has great vision and ambition for the haibun form. He has said in an essay in Blithe Spirit that he can envisage a book-length haibun being awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature at some stage in the future. And he is committed to doing the groundwork for this, and not least through his editorship of the Haibun Journal, which has just published its 6th issue. And all of these attributes have been recognised by the Arts Council of Ireland, who this year awarded him a literature bursary to write 2 haibun collections, of which Fragmentation, the book we are celebrating tonight, is the first. And so on to Fragmentation. And we're constantly being told that this is the golden age of the essay and of experimental prose. The word meditations frequently crops up in relation to these experiments, but I've rarely seen it applied as aptly as it is here. But Fragmentation is much more than a series of isolated meditations. It's really a masterclass in juxtaposition. Translation studies tell us that arguments are advanced in different ways in different cultures. The English language favors linear argument and puts the onus on the writer to drive home their point, whereas Eastern traditions favor, they put more of the onus on the reader to construct a picture from a series of juxtapositions. It's a subtler and more intuitive approach, and I think it allows a lot more to be conveyed in a really economical fashion. Fragmentation consists of 3 complementary sections, and within each section, Sean interweaves experimental prose forms with the most exquisite haiku. You could select any of them at random, but as a taster, I'd like to give you the example of the first and last in the book. So the book begins, blood moon into my soul, dripping. And the last haiku of the collection is, this fragile life, snow-loaded clouds, slippy underfoot. And these wonderful haiku throughout the book, they're predominantly drawn from nature, and this somehow normalizes the human condition as neither tragedy nor farce. It is considered holistically, it is a cog in the greater scheme of things, of everything that has being. Taking the book as a whole, by his use of the Japanese forms of haiku, haibun, and the style of essay known as zuihitsu, Sean builds up a very rounded, in-depth and compassionate view of the human mind. And at the heart of it is his father, to whom the book is dedicated. Now, I approach this book not just as a fan of Sean's writing, or as a friend, or as a member of the editorial team of the Haibun Journal, but really as a middle-aged child, as the middle-aged child of elderly parents. And as such, I find it a profoundly moving book, because Sean is so unflinching in the way he confronts the aging process. There's no self-pity and there's no raging against the fates, but a very clear-eyed acceptance that I think can only come as the result of very deep self-knowledge. And there's an open-heartedness, which I think is best articulated by Heather Dyer, who I think is here tonight, in her blurb on the back of the book, from which I quote, "So this is how it feels to love deeply and joyfully, even in the face of loss." There's a haibun from part 1, A Great Day, in which he quotes Dogen Zenji: "In spring, fresh flowers. In summer, a cool breeze. In autumn, beautiful leaves. In winter, fresh snow. Every season is a good season. Every day is a good day." So there is, to me, a very profound acceptance of all the seasons of our lives in this book. And I'd like to finish this introduction by reading a short haibun from the book, which for me really encapsulates this. It's called Holy Island, and it's on page 58, if anybody has the book yet. Holy Island. At the edge of Loch Derg, shortly after daybreak. Over there, Holy Island. Mist in distant trees. Standing there with my dying friend. Final stage. 2 seasons to live, at most. These past few days he is feeling well, rises early, makes the most of every day, every minute. The water flat calm, stoop down, pick up, arm back, release. The arc of a stone, that moment as it peaks, that moment. So on that note, I am delighted to launch Fragmentation, and I look forward to hearing Sean reading from his book. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much, Amanda. Can you hear me? Is the sound okay? Well, that was wonderful, Amanda. Thank you so much. I will start with expressing my gratitude to a number of people. I would like to start by thanking all of you who have come here today, because we lonesome writers tapping away on our keyboards are utterly dependent on all of you to support us, to read what we write, and to come to events like this. And I'm deeply grateful to all of you for coming today. I'm profoundly grateful to Amanda Bell for her friendship over the past number of years, for the collaboration that we've enjoyed, which is really, on her part, very generous and has given me great insights. And Amanda is a person who makes suggestions that really work out, which is marvelous. What more can you ask for a friend, and an artistic friend, and one whose writing I really deeply admire. And if anybody hasn't read Riptide yet, published by Dira Press, I highly recommend it, sincerely. So thank you for your very active, proactive collaboration and all your help. I'd like to thank Kim Richardson, who is not only my publisher and a wonderful editor and advisor, but also a writer I admire. And I would say that when myself and Kim met, I think it's fair to say, certainly for my part, I felt I'd met a fellow traveler. But more importantly, I'd met a fellow traveler, see if you can get your head around this, with whom I had been traveling long before we met. Thank you very much, Kim. And of course, Amanda and Kim and myself are 3 out of 4 of the editorial team of the Haibun Journal, and I'm deeply grateful to Paul Bragazzi for all the hard work and insightful contributions that he makes to the Haibun Journal, which is now about to enter its 4th year very shortly. The Arts Council of Ireland for their practical support in the form of a literary bursary really means a lot to me, and has really allowed me to open up my work in a very practical way. There are a number of editors here tonight, and there are many more that are not here that have published much of the work from Fragmentation, and I'm very, very pleased to see some of them here, and I'm very grateful to them. Some people have read parts of this work as it's in progress, and I'm particularly grateful to Keith Police in Texas and for the Pepper Potts haibun group. For long-term support, as in support going back decades, back to 1996, I think, we have the Red Thread Haiku Sangha, which has been a great well of inspiration to me, and I'm particularly grateful to George Marsh for years of editorial advice, assistance, mentorship, but above all to Jim Norton, who put me on this road of haibun back in the 1990s. I'm deeply grateful to you, Jim, for all the work you've done over decades now. For the blurbs of this book, I'm very pleased to say that I was very lucky to be able to have Heather Dyer, who's here, Bob Lucky, who's also here, and who can't be with us tonight, Gabriel Rosenstock, who incidentally is probably the most prolific writer in Japanese forms in the Irish language. Thankfully, he's also a very good translator of his own work, which doesn't automatically, can't be taken for granted, but he's a very, very good translator, so we can read his work in English as well. I would like to just mention 4 people that are no longer with us, that were very instrumental in my development in the world of haibun, and many other people besides, and they are Ken Jones, the late David Cobb, Bill Wyatt, and Stuart Quine. I very much missed them. And finally, to my father. My father taught me how to be true to yourself. And he also taught me the benefits of what I would call unconscious stoicism. For my father was one of the greatest living stoics that I have ever met. So I would now like to read from Fragmentation. I'll read a number of pieces, and again, appreciation to you all for coming. The first piece I'll read is called Notice. Notice, there is nothing in this photograph that says dementia. We are sitting on a bed, his bed, for the moment. He wears a smart striped shirt and the trousers of one of his suits, close shaven and hair white as a senator's. His eyebrows knitted and hands caught in a gesture suggesting he's explaining something complicated to me, something important. I appear to be listening intently, making an effort to understand. There is a sadness in my frozen face. I look at my eyes and see something there that catches me by surprise, something I was not aware of at the time. My eyes are fixed on an unfolding loss. Pale embers of grief smolder in them. At first, I'm embarrassed at what they reveal, disappointed that I let my guard down. Looking again, my disappointment deepens on seeing that he does not notice. He cannot notice. Part of me wants him to, or at least be able to. And part of me, a sunken part, knows that this is beyond us. Look at the picture, backlit, heavily exposed. In dying daylight, the screech of an owl, unanswered. Thank you very much. That was at a turning point in our lives when my father was in, I think they call it a stroke rehabilitation unit or something like that. So I'll go back to a couple of years before this turning point in his life and in those around him. The vegetable option. My father is 78 today. Every year I bring him for dinner on his birthday, dinner in the middle of the day. He is a countryman. This year he looks different. His chest shrinking. It is too big for him now. My father's jacket. I bought my grave, he announces. Did you? I did, he says. 450 euros in Burgess. So you have land in Burgess now? Oh, I do, he says. That's a good one. Land in Burgess. Do you have to look after it in the meantime? I ask. I don't know, he says. I haven't thought about that. You should use it, I say. Grow some vegetables, maybe. He laughs at that. That's a good one, he says. I could grow parsnips. Thank you very much. Two pieces that are long before the advent of this big change in my father's life. The first is called Above the Sea. Above the sea, the uneven ground pounds beneath me as I run the rough path high above the sea. My childish voice calls out. It is hilly, and every time I reach a brow, my heart sinks on not seeing him. Eventually, I realize I have gone too far and turn back to run the gauntlet again, brushing past overgrown bushes, eyes blurred with tears. Lost on a cliff path, that smell that brings relief. My father's jacket. Thank you very much. And some years later, rising, starless sky pouring into loneliness. The foghorns moaned. At the point of air, a heaving sea, cold and black, in waves thundering ashore, rolling rocks clatter and clank. The god of water roars with delight at the triumph of solitude. The wind god, too, rises up in song, and in the singing of a shoving wind, a cry is carried from beyond the dunes, the searching calls of my father, who has lost me. I turn and call to him, lean into a scream carried out and over the icy sea, where no one but the gods themselves can hear. We move forward a little bit in time. This is called Strive. 6 weeks after my father's stroke, I bring him out of the rehab unit into a cafe in the town. He studies passing road signs along the way and reads place names aloud to himself. We drink tea and chat about this and that. As we finish, I ask if he is ready to go. Go where? Back to where you're staying, I say. He pauses, but I don't remember where I'm staying. On our way back, we stop by a river, its banks overgrown, a tidy orchard on the other side. For the time being, the swerve and swoop of swallows through apple blossoms. He points to something in the river. Look at that, he says. Do you see that? That's what I'm talking about. You have to strive. His arm is raised, urging me to look. A fallen tree, thin branches pointing skyward, their fresh green sprouts. Some people that have read Fragmentation, and I appreciate you getting it and reading it. Several people have asked me to read a haibun called White Christmas. So I'm very, very pleased to do so, and thank you for asking, those of you who asked for this one. White Christmas. Sean said, we're not having dinner this Christmas, my father tells me. His hands tremble and his eyes dart around the room. How do you mean? I ask. He thinks there'll be too much snow up to the window. Imagine that. Who said this? I ask. Sean did, he says. My son. Winter solstice, the midday bells, silent this year. And staying with winter. Winter. My father's visits to hospital have become more frequent and for longer stays. In the windowless world of the A&E, there are no seasons. It is not an accident that we sometimes refer to our senior years as the winter of our life. My father is losing the hope of harvest, of reaping what we sow, of the promise of plenty. Ihe Vyaltana, on the hill of Ishnuk, the fires are burning. And finally, I will read the last final haibun in the collection. Baby. This is called Baby. The Christmas crib looks like it is made from an Alsatian's doghouse, with the side cut away to reveal the nativity scene. Nestled in fake straw, a crowd of kitsch figurines circle baby Jesus. There is a tinfoil star on the roof. It is freezing on this side of the COVID hub, so I keep my coat and gloves on. A staff member wheels my father in, both of them in Santa hats. He takes his off when he sees me, and he looks at it in his lap for a while before saying anything. We spend the first 10 minutes of our half-hour slot establishing that it is Christmas Eve, and the weather, and that he's well looked after. Dinner handed up to you, and the best of grub it is. Just as we're out of time, he reaches into the crib and pats the head of one of the magi. Then he presses his finger on the belly of baby Jesus. He turns to me and says, "I'll never forget it. You were a tiny baby. They said you were going to die. They all said you would die, but you didn't. You didn't." I'm sanitizing my hands as he is wheeled away, and I hear him say, "That's a son of mine, you know, a son of mine." This fragile life, snow-loaded clouds, slippy underfoot. Thank you so much.